Matrix, call John Roguet. Bailiff, John Roguet, the witness appears. Shirley, my God, look at the way his clothes are hanging on him. Du Bois and Shirley exchange glances, and with the other defendants and Vito Marcantonio, he doesn't even look like him. Where's the confident, erect chairman of the Peace Council we know? My God, the man looks like somebody entirely different. Du Bois, he's probably who it is. John Roguet, state your name and your function in the International Peace Council. Roguet, I was international chairman of the Peace Council. Matrix, when did you break with him? Last year. You go back to the barbershop, we go into another beauty parlor in Harlem. Commentary on this, we wanted to mix that up, you know. Back in the courtroom, prosecutor. Now you admit, Mr. Roguet, that you were an agent of the Yugoslavian government. Roguet, yes. Prosecutor, tell the jury, sir, is it your testimony that not only were you a Yugoslavian agent, but that you knew that the International Peace Organization that Dr. Du Bois and the other defendants belong to is to promote the foreign policy of the Soviet Union? Roguet, that's right, sir. There's no doubt about it. Matrix, you visited and spoken to the Soviet Union. That's right, sir, quite a few times. Prosecutor picks up a leaflet. And you will testify that this peace organization literature, and that it is the same as this foreign peace organization literature? Roguet, there's no doubt about it. Matrix holds up the leaflet, turns to Vito Marcantonio, turns back to Roguet. Do you know the defendant, W.E.B. Du Bois? Yes. Will you identify him for the court? Roguet sweeps the courtroom slowly as if it is difficult to find Du Bois. Du Bois, sensing this, pops out of his seat and holds up his hand. Sudden rush of applause. Judge, order in the court. Matrix, Mr. Roguet, can you say with any certainty what the real interests of this defendant and the rest of the International Peace Center were? Roguet, yes, quite simply to mouth Soviet propaganda, particular Soviet foreign policy. Matrix, and you have no doubt about this? Roguet, not a shadow of a doubt. Thank you, sir. Turning like a demon to Vito Marcantonio, beaming, your witness. Marcantonio rises very deliberately from his chair and walks slowly and directly toward Roguet. There's an intensity in Marcantonio that makes Roguet very visibly shrink back. The nearer Marcantonio approaches, and then Marcantonio noticed that he shrinks back every time he approaches him. So he stops, Marcantonio stops, and turns as if to get more papers. Then he turns again, the same reaction from Roguet. The spectators react to this slow stalking and the backward shrinking. Mr. Rogue, purposely mispronouncing his name. Mr. Rogue, do I have your name pronounced correctly? Is that R-O-G-U-E? No, it's R-O-G-G-E. Marcantonio, you come from a long line of rogues. Roguet looks up beseechingly at his attorney. Marcantonio, does that mean you don't know if you come from a long line of rogues? Prosecutor, Your Honor, the defense is not being responsible. Roguet, my name is Roguet, as you well know. Marcantonio, or Roguet by any other name. Matrix, Your Honor. Mr. Marcantonio, will you please dispense with the games? Get on with it. All right, Your Honor. Well, Roguet, let's get past your lineage. Have you gone to Europe a great deal? Yes. You have? Why? Why did you go to Europe? Well, I went to get instructions, to reach my contacts, to get literature produced. Did you usually travel alone? Yes. So that your various trips to Central Europe, particularly, you invariably went by yourself. You conducted business by yourself in Europe, is that right? That's right. In other words, or the same words, despite any cloak of propriety you might seek to wrap yourself in. Matrix, objection, Your Honor. I object to defense attorney's attempt to characterize the witness as, quote, wrapping himself in a cloak of propriety. Marcantonio, why? Mr. Matrix, is it some other kind of garment? I mean, other than a cloak? Snickers from the crowd. Please, Mr. Marcantonio, be straightforward in your cross-examination. Walking away from Roguet, Roguet relaxes and leaning forward. Then Marcantonio turns and walks back toward him. Roguet shrinks again. It becomes obvious to the assembled that Roguet is frightened and stiff. It is safe to say that you alone, of the founders and executives of the Peace Information Center, had various dealings and direct contacts in Central Europe. That none of these defendants ever accompanied you or knew, for that matter, what you were doing. Is that true, Mr. Roguet? Yes, that's right. Marcantonio now, Roguet is leaned all the way back in his seat. Marcantonio turns and begins to walk away. Roguet begins to ease forward to the seat. Suddenly, Marcantonio, knowing this, wheels around and confronts him. Roguet pulls back furiously as if expecting a blow. Is there something wrong, Rogue? Roguet, no, no. Marcantonio turns around. Roguet starts to relax. Marcantonio turns sharply. Roguet pulls back sharply. Mr. Roguet, you say, you were a lawyer, right? Roguet, yes, I am a lawyer. Marcantonio, you were once a civil rights lawyer, weren't you? I am. We won't debate here what you are, my friend. I think it's safe to say many people seem to know, Roguet squirming. Did you read I.F. Stone and The Compass today about yourself? Prosecutor, I object, Your Honor, I object. It is irrelevant and prejudicial to my witness testimony for the defense to refer to hostile descriptions of him. Marcantonio, have you read the article I'm speaking of, Mr. Matrix? Matrix, no, I don't want to. Marcantonio, you have no interest in reading it, having it read? Matrix, no, and I object to you referring to it. Marcantonio starts with the door, then turns. Mr. Roguet, have you read Mr. Stone's column? Voice over, as Roguet, who has seen it, is hearing it in his head. Quote, "Oh, John Roguet betrayed himself and the cause of peace when he testified for the government. It's one thing to disagree with the Stockholm Peace Appeal. It is another to act as a finger man for the government. Roguet should have made himself a hero and covered the independent left with honor if he had risked citation for contempt rather than help to send other radicals to jail. However, he might disagree with them. By testifying, Roguet ruined all he stood for in the past." Roguet drops his head. Vito Marcantonio, you were these defendants' co-workers. You were one of the founders of the peace effort, is that right? Nods, yes, I was one of the founders. I was one of the founders. Then why are you testifying here against them, against the movement you helped build? Because the communists were taking it over. Are these people, these defendants here, the communists you're talking about? Those appeals were communist propaganda. The communists were taking over the movement. As Roguet gets more and more impassioned, Marcantonio stops and begins to walk toward him again. But do you have any indication, any proof, any concrete evidence that any of these defendants even knew what you seem to believe is a fact? Roguet, they agreed with the documents. They agreed that the U.S. was spearheading the warmongers. It was their opinions then that turned you against them. The fact that they agreed with documents you didn't agree with. Roguet, yes. You disagreed. That's right, I disagreed. They disagreed with you. That's right. You disagreed with them. They disagreed with you. So this means they should go to jail for 5 years and pay a $10,000 fine? No, I didn't. But it was a communist takeover. Give me the proof they were involved in any way other than having opinions. You, and looking at Matrix and this government, did not agree with. Matrix showed you the documents. What does that mean? You have proof of nothing. Mr. Matrix has proof of nothing. He does not even know you are a civil rights lawyer once. All he knows is that he wants to convict Dr. Bois and the rest of these defendants, that he wants to send this great world-renowned scholar and thinker to jail at 83 years old. Because there are people, powerful people who disagree with him and others that want to silence them. I have nothing to do with that. I'm really telling the truth. I don't want the boys to go to jail, frenzied. Matrix told me they offered to disconnect him from the others and give him leniency, but he refused. Spontaneous applause from the audience. Judge pounds his gavel. Marcantonio, who's now all over Roguet, forcing him to bend over backward. Leniency? Leniency? Leniency for what? For thinking? For daring to have ideas about the world you or John Foster Dulles or our corporate royals you don't agree of? I object, Your Honor. Objection. I object the way Marcantonio is browbeating my witness. Marcantonio, browbeating? Am I beating your brow, Mr. Roguet? If I am, I'm sorry. The other defendants are enjoying this immensely. Judge, Mr. Marcantonio, please don't break Mr. Roguet's back. Marcantonio, Judge McGuire, sir, I move for an immediate acquittal. If this is the government's chief witness, then indeed there is no case at all. There is no case. Motion denied. Finish questioning the witness, Mr. Marcantonio. Mr. Roguet, you broke with the peace movement because you disagreed with them. Because they've been taken over by the Soviet Union. But we know you have no concrete basis for this assertion. We've been through that. There's not the slightest shred of evidence that Du Bois and the rest function as agents for anyone except their own beliefs. The only person who admittedly functioned as an agent for anyone was you. Mr. Rogay. You admit you received compensation and documents from the Yugoslavian government. Is that true? Nodding. Speak up. Tell us clearly. You worked for the Yugoslavian government, didn't you? Yes, yes. Other than that, there's no evidence that anyone else did anything but follow the path of their own principle and beliefs. Nodding. Mark Antonio wheels suddenly. Your Honor, if there's any foreign agent as far as this case is concerned, it's this witness. He's admitted it in open court. Majors, but he isn't indicted. Mark Antonio, exactly. He turns and takes his seat, leaving Rogay sitting. Judge, are you through with this witness, Mr. Mark Antonio? Mark Antonio, for the time being. Matrix, the prosecution rests this case. The judge's head flies up in the air. Arrest! Mr. Matrix, you're not calling any other witnesses? Stung by the judge's manner. No, Your Honor, I think we've proved beyond the shadow of a doubt the government's case. The judge blinks momentarily but does not move. Mr. Mark Antonio, are you ready to present your defense? Mark Antonio, yes, Your Honor. But first, I would like to reiterate my motion for immediate acquittal. The government has presented nothing but the fact that these defendants have certain opinions. One of my clients, Dr. Du Bois, is world famous for these opinions for many years. There has certainly been no attempt on any of their parts to hide these opinions. Judge, I reserve my opinion on the matter, Mr. Mark Antonio. Who will you call? Mark Antonio, very deliberately to maximize the effect. Well, Dr. Du Bois, of course, but the defense has only one witness who has offered to appear as a character witness. Prosecutor, one witness? Judge, who is it, Mr. Mark Antonio? Albert Einstein. A sharp buzzing, even jubilance, animates the spectators. The judge fixes Mark Antonio in a speculative glare, then nods. The court will be adjourned until 3 o'clock. Then there's a long piece on Bumpy Johnson, who of course was at the trial, and the government is trying to take him out, you know, and we talk about that. Then we talk about how, you know, how Shirley Graham and Du Bois got together, and also the question of this birthday party that they're trying to give at Smalls, which they couldn't do. So back to the courtroom. The jury is filing back in. The crowd is coming in. Du Bois, Shirley, and others are finishing their discussion and coming in. Even though the courtroom is crowded, some of the young people get up to give the older people their seats. The attorneys and finally the judge come in. When all is quiet, the judge begins. Judge, I want first to set aside Mr. Mark Antonio's first motion. On the second motion for acquittal, let me say this. He's calm and unhurried. The government has alleged that the Peace Information Center was an agent of a foreign principal. They proved the existence, in my judgment, of the Peace Information Center. They certainly proved the existence of the World Council of Peace. Mrs. Moose there may well have gone to Prague, may well have gone to Moscow, but applying the test is laid down here in a case which presumably is the law of the land. In this case, the government has failed to support on the evidence adduced the allegations laid down in the indictment. So therefore, the motion under the circumstance for judgment of acquittal be granted. The crowd begins to yell. They grab each other. Applause, ripple. Shirley, fixing on Mr. Matrix, the prosecutor begins to laugh, quietly at first, then in a loud clip she's trying to stifle. It's a sight of Matrix. He's standing, plainly confused, bewildered. Well, Your Honor, I guess there's nothing more for me to say. Judge, no, Mr. Matrix, I guess there isn't. I'm telling the defendants they may go. Then it goes to the birthday party and what's happening in Harlem, you know, which is, you know, some interesting stuff, the mix of people. The government's attempting to lock up Bumpy Johnson. Last act, Small's Paradise. They have a radio announcer announcing the names. Coming to Small's Paradise tonight to honor Dr. Bois, we see all the people sitting. The Phoenix and Paradise tonight to honor Dr. Du Bois tonight. We see all the people sitting. The Phoenix, the Phoenix and Sheba's, which is the beauty parlor, in couples, including the Harlem people, Herman, Evelyn, Little Richie, Little Boy. E. Franklin Fraser is the MC. He's reading the telegrams. Applause after each one. Benjamin Mays of Morehouse College. Catholic Bishop, Archbishop Williams. H. Francis, Langston Hughes, Judge Hubert Delaney, Mary McLeod Bethune, Hewlett Johnson, Dean of Canterbury Cathedral, Dmitry Shostakovich, Frederick Joliet Curie, President of the World Peace Council, George Lukács, Hungary, Vice President Kumo Zhou, People's Republic of China. On the stage, Shirley Graham Du Bois, Paul Robeson, Belford Lawson, Essie Robeson, Vito Marcantonio at tables in front. Du Bois gets up and begins to speak. At the end, I won't read all the speech. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called subversives. There it is, cracks up. Many of our friends are less fortunate tonight. Even though we have been acquitted, this McCarthyism madness continues and is bringing some of our finest people down. The persecution of Paul Robeson by the government of the United States during these last years has been one of the most contemptible happenings in modern history. Applause. Robeson has done nothing to hurt or defame this nation, though it has historically discouraged, starved, and insulted our people. And so that whole thing of attacking them for attacking Robeson, the American Negro must realize that the attack on me for socialism is but the cloaked effort of Southern whites to deprive Negroes of leadership in my and other cases. I was just as much hated by the white South before the Russian Revolution as now, and feared by those who were and are determined to keep the dark world in submission. They seized on the charge subversion and communism to silence me, just as they once charged abolition to shut the mouths of others. My wife Shirley and I are working on a book, In the Battle for Peace, which will throw even more light on these dire happenings. My refusal to call for war with the Soviet Union, my own socialist thinking intensified the enmity of those who rule, my defense of the Rosenbergs in speech and writing, by the denunciation of the hounding and imprisonment of men and women for their beliefs. In this crazy period, McCarthyism did the same. All this made my enemies in federal government take a determined stand to ensure my destruction. The secret police swarmed in my neighborhood asking about my visitors. When once we entertained a Soviet diplomat, his wife and daughter, and Paul Robeson, the whole borough of Brooklyn was declared out of bounds for Soviet diplomats. My manuscripts and those of my wife, Shirley Graham, are now being refused publication by so-called reputable publishers who once sought them out eagerly. My mail is being tampered with or withheld. Negro newspapers are being warned not to carry my writing, and they mention prominently my name. Colleges cease to invite my lectures, and Negro colleges no longer ask for my lectures and my presence at commencement exercise. From being a person whom every Negro in the nation knew my name, at least hasten always to entertain and praise. Churches and Negro conferences refused to mention my past and present existence. The white world, which never liked me, was forced in the past to respect me, now ignored me or deliberately distorted my work. A whispering campaign continually intimated that some hidden treason or bribery could be laid at my door if the government had not been lenient. The central office of the NAACP refused to let local branches invite me or sponsor my lectures. I was refused the right to speak at the University of California because of the NAACP protests. In fine, I became the most rejected of men, refused the right to travel abroad, classed as a controversial figure, even after being acquitted. It was a bitter experience, and I bowed before the storm, but it did not break. Applause. I continue to speak and write where I can. I faced my lowered income and lived within it. I found a new world and lived in a wider world than ever before, a world of no color line. I lost my leadership of my race. People have tears in their eyes. Bumpy and Sunday and Huey and Sheba and Shirley and Paul, the Harlem people all shout, "No, no, no!" But it was a dilemma for the mass of blacks. Either they joined in the current beliefs and action of most whites, or they could not make a living. The color line was beginning to break. Negroes were getting recognition as never before. Was not to sacrifice one man's small payment for this, the same cries, "No, no, no!" Even those who disagreed with this judgment kept quiet. The colored children ceased to hear my name. Cries of "No, no," Shirley weeping, Gracie too now standing, "No, no." Du Bois, even though age is distasteful to this nation, I do not apologize for living long. High on the ramparts of this blistering hell of life, I sit and see the truth. I look it full in the face, and I will not lie about it, neither to myself nor the world. I've seen my country as what a man named Belfridge called a frightened giant, afraid of the truth, afraid of peace. An international world of political and economic cooperation is progressing anyway. And I believe in socialism and a world where it will triumph, to each according to his need, from each according to his ability. For this I will work as long as I live, and I still live. Applause from the audience. He talks to a little boy there named Richie, and I could go on with this speech. Once he was acquitted, he went to England, France, Germany, Russia, China, and finally he went to Ghana to finish the Encyclopedia Africana, and that's where he died. You know, as the Ethiopian ambassador said, "Our father is dead." When we see him in China, and happily we have some footage of him in China, speaking at Tiananmen Square, you know, with Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai and people standing next to him. And speaking before 1 million people in Tiananmen Square. Standing on the dais with Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai, we got slides of Messiah's film and these other films from Amiri. And so, he goes on with that. You see Shirley speaking for him at the All Africa Conference, which was a continuation of the Pan-African Congress. And we see headlines, Kwame Nkrumah has become the first prime minister. Du Bois, the Prime Minister of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, has asked me to begin the compiling of an Encyclopedia Africana. I believe this work is vital to the whole of Africa. Images, he's applauded in Africa, Nyerere, Touré, Nasser, headlines of the Third World independence struggle, Mao and Du Bois together, laughing like school children. Mao, mistakes, mistakes. Please, Dr. Du Bois, we in China have made more mistakes than anyone. We try to learn from them, you know. And so, there's a switch, and we see at this independence ceremony in Ghana, you know, Du Bois sitting because of his exhaustion. An English official is telling Shirley Du Bois, how gratifying it is that your people do not hold grudges. With their primitive minds, they are unable, like we Westerners, to hold grudges. The African band is playing, I'll be glad when you did, you rascal you. An African woman is laughing so hard she's crying. You know, this bureaucrat says to Nkrumah, has your husband known the Prime Minister long enough? Nkrumah says, he is my father. All right, and to end, of course, this is where he died. He tells Nkrumah leaving, I want to thank you for all you've done to make the ending of my life bountiful and beautiful. I rejoice to have seen the pilot light you're raising in Ghana. I have only one regret. I failed you. My strength gave out before I could carry out our plans for an encyclopedia. Forgive an old man. Don't say that. Nkrumah's passionate. You have not failed. You're here laying the foundation. You've created the structure, outlined the work. You have not failed me. Du Bois, it's not enough. I want to do much more to make everything clear and certain. I'm sorry. Goodbye and God bless you. And Nkrumah comes out, tears streaming down his face. He says to Shirley, did you hear that? He was telling me goodbye, weeping. Is there anything I can do? Is there anything I can do? Is there anything you need? When the doctors come to see him, please tell them to come immediately to me. And Shirley comes back to Du Bois, and he says, now to Shirley, now sit here beside me. Rest your little self. Don't bother about supper or anything else. Just stay here with me. She sits holding his hand. The shadows in the room deepen and deepen. The Ethiopian ambassador is standing, weeping outside the house. Our father is leaving us. Our father is leaving us, he's weeping. The last image of Shirley and W.E.B. He calls her name one last time, Shirley. Then the last part, image of the full guard of Nkrumah on parade, and Nkrumah saluting W.E.B. and making the last speech. We mourn the death of W.E.B. Du Bois, a great son of Africa. It was the late George Padmore who described Dr. Du Bois as the greatest scholar the Negro race has produced, and one who always upheld the right of Africans to govern themselves. We mourn his death. May he live in our memory, not only as a distinguished scholar, but a great African patriot. Dr. Du Bois is a phenomenon, May he rest in peace. As Nkrumah is speaking, a panorama of W.E.B's triumphs, and in Harlem at the Phoenix barbershop, Mr. Sunday is hanging a portrait in the window. Windows falling out of his eyes, tears falling out of his eyes. At the beauty parlor, Sheba's, the women are standing weeping, and little Richie, the little boy that Du Bois talked to, walking slowly down the street, comes to a stop. He keeps walking again, picking up steam till he gets near the Phoenix, where the men are standing around crying in silence. Suddenly Richie is calling, "I know what I want to do, Dr. Du Bois. I know what I want to do." There's a sign in the barbershop showing the 1936 Olympics with Jesse Owens receiving the baton for his victorious relay run. Richie points at it. "That's what I'm going to do." His mother's crossing the street, so she hears it. "Aunt Evelyn, I know what I'm going to do. I know what I'm going to be. That's what Dr. Du Bois told me I ought to do. Well, I'm doing it. I know what I want to do." "What, Richie? What are you talking about?" Herman is holding her. Her husband is holding her like something is wrong with the boy. Richie, "That's what I want to do. It's my turn now. I got the stick. I'm the runner now. He gave it to me, and I'm carrying it all the way to the finish line." The assembly look. "That's right, boy. All the way to the finish line." "Yes, Richie, that's right. You got it now. He gave it to you and right in public where everybody could see." They're laughing and crying. There's these photos of the newspaper of W.E.B's death, and under that news, the March on Washington, which is the next day. Da 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 da. Let me say that. Thank you, thank you. Let me say that I seen last night SNCC, you know, they were honoring Faye Bellamy, and we're talking about Du Bois, so that's a bit of Sankofa. We got to take a back step so we can leap forward. We got to contemplate what we was and what we did so we can take a leap forward. We've been on the cool out under Obama, and I certainly support him. I couldn't support that maniac that was running against him, but we've been cooled out momentarily. But in 3 years, he'll be gone. And the same thing is going to confront us again. So we saw Chokwe Lumumba tonight, who's running for mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. Can you imagine that? And my son Raz is running for mayor of Newark. Any of you all want to come to Newark and help us? Come on. So thank you very much.